好，咁多謝大家。咁啱先密站咗1分鐘，而家記者會會正式開始。首先可以坐翻低先。咁再一次多謝各位記者今日出席民間記者會。今日主題係魔警圍城，萬人援救，和勇聯手，黎明起義。而今日主要會有3個環節，分別係中英文嘅發言，然後會係讀出 Polly 嘅手足寫出嘅家書，以及最後有問答嘅環節。咁我哋再一次感謝基進報道提供佢哋嘅手語與傳譯員。Thank you very much for attending the Citizens Press Conference today. A very warm welcome from us here. Our theme today is A City Under Siege, Thousands United to the Call of Freedom. The conference will be divided into 3 parts. We will begin with the Chinese and English speeches, read the letter written by Hong Konger escaped from PolyU, and we will finish with a Q&A section. We would like to thank Radical HK again for sending in their sign language interpreters. 咁開始之前，我哋首先請台前發言人企起身俾記者影張相，麻煩記者可能要幫手影埋手語嘅工作人員。Before we start, we do have a brief photography section for the press, so if the panel would please stand for a minute, please, thank you. 咁首先可以望向左邊。咁可以望返去中間。係，咁首先請發言人坐翻低先。So I hope the press have all had the time to get their photos。咁希望各位記者啱啱係已經影好相嘅。咁而家我哋會開始我哋嘅記者會。咁首先會請我哋嘅中文發言人首先發言。Now is the part of the Chinese speech, please。
各位記者朋友好，抗爭運動喺過去2個星期蜂擁雲起。雙11嘅黎明行動突破運動樽頸，然而林鄭月娥政權接連以數千催淚毒彈、致命火力、裝甲車同埋水炮車瘋狂攻擊中文大學同埋理工大學。抗爭者於2號橋之役堅守中大，1星期之內，理工大學被魔警強加暴亂之罪，以非人道嘅手法強行包圍。過千嘅抗爭者被魔警禁錮於理大，當中亦都唔少人身受重傷，但係得唔到足夠嘅醫療支援，甚至威脅將會以暴動罪嘅罪名被捕。被困理大嘅手足遭遇人道厄運，激發起數以萬計嘅香港人上街前往救援，但魔警為咗鎮壓，喺油麻地開車高速撞向人群，更一邊向密集嘅人群使用震撼彈，導致人踩人嘅慘劇，傷者無數。抗爭前線警暴不斷，但極權暴力更加見於制度上。縱然不同嘅政治光譜嘅人士去到校園調停斡旋，無論有關人士出於啲咩政治嘅考量，的而且確係令到部分有需要嘅抗爭者暫且安全離開理大，但無恥嘅係，保安局長李家超竟然試圖反口，指離開嘅人士屬於自首同埋涉嫌參與暴動，連中學校長亦都不敢狠批。單就理大一役，暴政喺琴日就已經檢控咗242人，為運動開展以嚟單日檢控最多人數嘅一日。而中大一役，魔警喺校方調停嘅時候，突擊反口推進，亦都歷歷在目，再次證明政權魔警已經誠信破產，絕不可信。5大訴求必須缺一不可， 冇真普選，由失信極權提出嘅獨立調查，公信力可想而知。縱然抗爭者於理大嘅救援行動付出沉重代價，但民間記者會懇請手足無需灰心。此時此刻，大家必須堅守不分化、不割席嘅原則，深入檢討、重整旗鼓。即使有人最終決意離開，佢哋都唔係放棄抗爭，而係負傷但不得妥善治理，更加唔想連累其他留喺理工大學嘅手足而被迫離開。理大一役亦都反映咗離地政權天真咁以為夷平大學就可以將所有勇武抗爭者一網打盡，數以十萬計前往理工大學救援嘅香港人已經印證，勇武從來唔係一群人，勇武係一種心態，勇武係香港人堅守共同理想而催生無比嘅勇氣同力量。無論大家角色如何，關鍵時刻亦願意走上前線，力挽狂瀾，真正齊上齊落。一日政權拒絕落實訴求，香港人只會堅持以唔同嘅角色撐落去，和勇不分，抗爭到底。過去半個月，或者有手足中槍，周同學離開大學遭受強攻，黎明行動引發起討論，令大家開始擔心抗爭運動嘅走向。雙十一嘅黎明行動罕有喺早上開始抗爭，拉長戰線，成功為運動帶嚟咗新嘅形態。而魔警強攻大學，甚至動用專職接替嘅解放軍出動於大學一帶清理路障，凸顯極權無視普世價值。與此同時，北京亦都火力全開，中共總書記習近平終於親自開腔，重申要止暴制亂，無疑係要求林鄭政權同埋親共派歸隊嘅動員令。中共嘅香港代理人亦都隨即開始文攻武鬥，建制派動員烏合之眾攻擊示威者，政府將抗爭者以武制暴、被動還擊嘅行動加以抹黑，無視抗爭者喺交通癱瘓背後嘅無可奈何同埋政治訴求，單純嘅責備同埋歸咎，亦都無視建制烏合之眾武警持刀襲擊、圍毆同埋綁架女子嘅惡行。沒有壓迫就沒有反抗，沒有剝削就沒有堵路。政權眼見現時香港人生活受影響，若然係真心為民設想，還政於民落實5大訴求，一切根本就可以解決。我哋從來都冇聽過用 AR-15 步槍威脅學生係可以為社會帶嚟穩定。只要仔細留意下政府每日重複嘅論調，唔難發現政府只係翻炒5年前雨傘運動嘅套路，將一切嘅問題歸咎於抗爭者，試圖倒果為因，旨在製造夢寐以求嘅民意逆轉，謀求嘅係本週日視為民意公投嘅區議會選舉中翻盤。不過大家可以深思，如果習近平開腔總動員之後，抗爭者仍然堅持，極權顏面何在呢？相反，抗爭者嘅努力冇白費，多次負隅頑抗引起國際社會繼續關注。僅於習近平動員過後，美國參議院就加速通過《香港人權與民主法案》，正係向北京極權狠刮一巴。民間記者會必須重新落實5大訴求，正係解決所謂困局嘅不二法門。5大訴求全部屬於本港內地事務，政府絕對有法定能力一一落實。相反，如果政府執迷不悟，繼續縱容警暴，甚至為警黑合作開路，一意孤行強力打壓，反抗力度只會更大。香港人唔會妥協，誓死要同政權抗爭到底。美國國會已經以實際行動表明正義係站在抗爭者嘅一方。 香港人必須要一齊行動，向國際社會展明我哋爭取民主自由嘅決心，以換來更加多嘅支援。無論係抗爭前線、山罷戰線、民宣戰線、國際戰線定係議會戰線，都必須奮力頑抗，直至凱旋。多謝。
On the 11th of November, our movement achieved a breakthrough, emerging from a bottleneck with the advent of Operation Dawn. Yet since then, our city has continued to see the Hong Kong police force commit crime against humanity. Just a week ago, the police fired thousands of tear gas canisters into the campus of Chinese University of Hong Kong under the sloppy excuse of protecting public property, even daring to put professors in their line of fire. Just after the protesters from the Chinese University fearlessly defended their campus in the Battle of No. 2 Bridge, the police have resorted to more inhumane tactics, blockading and cancelling protesters at the Polytechnic University of Hong Kong, denying them access to food, medical assistance and shelter. Thus, tens of thousands of Hong Kongers were compelled to take to the streets to stand in solidarity with the protesters in the Polytechnic University. In response, police horrifically fired shock grenades and rammed vehicles into crowds of protesters, directly causing stampedes and countless completely unnecessary injuries. Tyranny and violence are now systematic. In the Battle of Polytechnic University, despite negotiation efforts from figures on different sides of the political spectrum, they successfully bargained for the safe release of some of the civilians trapped in Polytechnic University. Secretary for Security John Lee Ka-chi still reneged on the agreement, shamelessly framing the release of civilians as their confession for involving in rioting, shocking even those who had participated in the negotiation, just like how in the Battle of Chinese University, the Hong Kong police force repeatedly reneged on every one of their ceasefire promises. These incidents only prove to us once again that the Hong Kong police force and the regime are morally bankrupt. Hong Kongers have long lost faith and trust in them. May this serve to remind us that our 5 demands must come together as one package, with not one less, and that without true universal suffrage and a credible government, Hong Kongers will never receive the fair and just independent inquiry that we so direly seek. Even the Hong Kongers Operation Rescue Poly-U could not accomplish all that we hoped to, and many of us paid for it with a heavy price. We, the Citizens' Press Conference, wish to remind all of us, do not succumb to defeatism. Do not place the blame on each other, but instead reflect on our operation and assess how we may improve. Even though some of us chose to leave the campus, those that left have not surrendered, but rather they were forced so that they could obtain proper treatment for their injuries and would not be a burden for those of us who choose to stay. Moreover, Operation Rescue Poly-U has shown even the most pacifist of us to be valiant revolutionary is a state of mind. To be a revolutionary is to embody the relentless determination that we have grown from our common unwavering ideals. No matter the role that each of us stand in, we have seen that we are all willing to take to the front lines and stand against the impossible when the situation calls for it. No matter the regime's naivete, thinking that by besieging Polytechnic University, it can ensnare all of Hong Kong as revolutionaries, we know that every revolutionary was once a pacifist, and therefore each day the regime continues to refuse its people's demands, Hong Kong protesters will persist on, each in our capacities. On pain of repetition, we continue to call on everyone to stand by our principles. No division, no disunion, no denunciation. revolutionary or pacifist, we stand as one. In the past few weeks, we have been through so much, from fellow protesters being shot with live bullet rounds, to Alex Chow's tragic passing, to our universities being turned into war zones. Forget not all that we have been through together. Controversies from Operation Dawn may have sparked worries about direction and future of this movement. And from us at the Citizens Press Conference, it is our hope that our discussions may remain constructive. And so we wish to hereby summarize Hong Kong's situation now and put it into perspective for all of us. Since Operation Dawn started, where we uncharacteristically began our civil disobedience starting from the morning, we made a breakthrough in the bottleneck of this movement. On the other hand, the Hong Kong police force has continued its use of increasingly violent means, even using an unheard maneuver of besieging multiple universities. The People's Liberation Army, perhaps better known for their world-leading bedsheet folding skills, has started to openly thwart Hong Kong's garrison's law in self-initiating operations beyond their garrison's area. President Xi himself personally voiced out Beijing's call for Hong Kong to cease riot and prevent chaos, attempting to rally together the establishment and pro-communist camps together to use every means to silence the Hong Kong people's demands, both intensifying the level of violence used and also intensifying the smear campaign of protesters, attempting to put all the blame of social dysfunction and paralysation of traffic onto protesters, all while completely ignoring every advice from the establishment and the police force. The reality is that if no one were oppressed, no one would offer resistance. If no one were exploited, no one would think of paralysing the traffic. If the regime had truly cared about its residents' livelihoods, it would fulfill the 5 demands and all would be solved. We have never before imagined that threatening students with AR-15 rifles is a way to stabilise society. Putting this into perspective, and noting the regime's monotonous and repetitive propaganda, we observe that the regime is simply attempting a reprisal of the strategy during the 2014 Umbrella Movement, blasting out the line that all inconveniences are the fault of protesters, in the hope that public opinion would turn in their favour, in an attempt to salvage what they can in the district council election this Sunday. But what a shame for the authoritarian regime. It would persist in our resistance, even after President Xi's rally to silence us. What phase would this face-loving regime have left? Hong Kong's efforts in the past few weeks have not been wasted. Fighting against all odds, our city has once again garnered attention worldwide. And since President Xi's rally to crack down, very shortly we saw the US Congress accelerate the passage of the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, a slap to Beijing's totalitarian face. Hong Kong has expressed our deepest gratitude to all the representatives and senators. Without whose selfless efforts and dedication, the stern rebuke to Communist China would not have been possible. The Citizens Press Conference shall once again reiterate that the only way for the government to resolve the unrest in our society is to agree to the Hong Kong people's legitimate calls for our 5 demands. The 5 demands sit squarely within the jurisdiction of Hong Kong's domestic affairs, and this regime surely has every legal authority to grant its people these demands. Conversely, if this regime will not repent from its reprehensible ways and continue to oppress its own people, it will only be met by the Hong Kong people, a resilient and determined people, with all of our resistance and defiance.
跟住落嚟會係讀出理工大學家書嘅環節。家書係由一位由理工大學走出嚟嘅手足所寫嘅。咁首先會讀出中文嘅版本，其後就會讀出英文嘅版本。 Then is the time to read the letter written by a Hong Konger escaped from Polytechnic University. It will first read by Chinese version and then followed by English version. Please.
我喺11月19號朝頭早逃生，離開理工大學嘅大學生。寫呢封信係想講，雖然荒謬，但係真真切切咁喺香港發生嘅事。我喺11月16號夜晚返到理工大學嘅，嗰晚呢仲可以喺理工大學自由進出，但係到第二日朝頭早就已經俾 A Core 嘅催淚彈槍聲同埋抗爭者慌忙嘅聲音驚醒。去到第二日夜晚，黑警包圍理工大學，自此之後我就冇辦法再離開。整體嚟講，被困喺理工大學嗰幾日真係好折磨、好不安、好恐怖。嗰一晚，黑警話10點之後仲留喺理工大學入面嘅人，全部都會被告暴動罪。然而有幾個人呢，就喺9點幾出咗去，都逃唔出被捕嘅命運。黑警只會講大話。嗰一晚，黑警仲話好想重演當年6·4屠殺，紀律部隊威脅市民生命，十分可怕。留喺理工大學都唔係辦法，我好擔心會被黑警用暴力對待，甚至被消失，所以我都諗過用各種方法逃脫，包括路跑、坑渠同埋游繩。令到我最絕望嘅係要游繩走。我嗰陣企喺橋上面，真係好崩潰，我真係做唔到。面前百幾個人一齊想跳橋，循住一條懸空嘅繩爬落去，仲要冇任何嘅保護措施，真係好危險、好恐怖。我見到有人跌傷，有人食咗催淚煙，真係好心痛。我喺度諗，掉咗喺條繩上面，如果俾黑警一槍射中，生命就會玩完。到底我哋做咗啲乜嘢，班黑警會想殺我哋？到底我哋做咗啲乜嘢係要用游繩呢個方法逃生呢？然後聽到有人傳黑警會搜樓，我都好驚，於是凌晨又嘗試逃脫。呢一刻反而內心冇咁崩潰，因為根本冇時間俾我崩潰。我知道呢一刻我唔走，就會失去10年青春，就會死。用咗3個幾鐘路跑去 Z Core， 又淋凍水，由 Z Core 過橋到泳池，但係到最後都係返去原地，真係好攰，好無助，仲要受咗傷。記得去 Z Core 嘅時候，俾咗6-7個速龍發現，佢哋用警棍指住我哋，衝向我哋。我真係好驚會死。嗰幾日真係住緊嘅係非人生活，冇時間瞓，冇時間飲水，冇時間食嘢，一直精神都好繃緊，只係想知道點樣可以逃生，同埋經歷一次次撞板嘅逃亡。好彩最後有救護人員帶住受傷嘅示威者離開，去到醫院治療，中途都有黑警攔截。佢哋用咗好多時間去記低資料，語氣仲要具恐嚇性，甚至乎2個黑警上咗救護車。成個過程我都好驚，我只係想快啲接受治療同離開黑警。我唔明點解佢哋可以唔理救護車上嘅人命。所有喺理工大學發生嘅事，只係印證咗黑警意圖謀殺，非常可怕。我冇做錯任何事，我亦都唔見得暴動，我亦都冇參與暴動，所以我冇選擇自首。我想講，身處一個病態嘅社會，我冇辦法唔反抗。面對意圖謀殺嘅黑警，我冇辦法唔冒險逃生。我好感謝其他會想幫助被困嘅人。同時，我都好痛心反抗嘅學生同埋其他嘅示威者、社工、救護人員、記者，仲要受到黑警不人道嘅對待。市民發起救我哋，我就有一種用出面嘅人換入面嘅人嘅感覺。 見到佢哋又要俾黑警用不合理嘅武力對待，真係好傷心。我唔知仲有幾多更加荒謬嘅嘢會發生，我只係希望一切都快啲完結。出到嚟，我得兩個諗法：衷心希望好人一世平安，仲有理工大學入面嘅人一定要平安冇事，其他嘅義士都一定要身心健康同埋唔好被捕。仲有希望香港可以盡快重光，願榮光歸香港。多謝。
I'm a college student who was trapped inside Polytechnic University. In the morning of 19th of November, I escaped. Writing this letter, I want to tell you that this may be absurd, but it truly happened in Hong Kong. I entered Polytechnic University on the night of the 16th of November. That night, one could still freely enter and exit the campus. The next morning, I was rudely awoken to the sound of tear gas gunshots and the nervous sounds of hurrying protesters. That night, the infamous police of Hong Kong surrounded and blocked up Polytechnic University. Thereafter, there was no way for me to leave the campus. The few days I was trapped inside Polytechnic University were very torturous, unsettling, and nightmarish. That night, the police announced that whomever stayed inside the campus after 10 o'clock will be charged with rioting. Some people left at 9, yet they could not escape the fate of capture and arrest. Hong Kong's vile police only tells lies. That night, I heard the police say that they couldn't wait to see a repeat of the Tiananmen Square massacre. Such absurdity! For a disciplined force to threaten civilians' lives like this is extremely terrifying. I had no choice but to stay inside the campus. I was worried that the police would beat me, torture me, or even disappear me, like those floating corpses. And so I contemplated every way of escape, from running to exits to crawling through sewer or escaping via rope. What made me the most desperate was escaping by rope. That moment, standing on the bridge, I really broke down. I could not do it. In front of me, 100 and so people tried to jump off the bridge and climb down via a rope hanging in midair. We had no protection if we fell. It was so dangerous, so terrifying. I saw some slip and get hurt, and some had no choice but to breathe in the tear gas smoke, and I was really heartbroken. I was thinking, hang on the rope midair. If one police gunshot hits me, it would be the end of my life. And yet what have I done? That the vile police are trying to murder us. What have I done that I have to risk my life on the midair rope to escape? Afterwards, I heard the news that the police were searching the building floor by floor. I was really scared, and so in the early morning, I tried to escape again. That moment, I didn't so much break down, because I literally had no time to break down. I knew that if I didn't leave this moment, I would lose 10 years of my life. I will die. For 3 hours, I ran and ran. I got to Z-Corps, and with a body of cold sweat, I ran across the bridge to the swimming pool, in the end ending up where I started. It was so tiring, and I felt so hopeless, and I was injured. When I passed by Z-Corps, I was discovered by 6 or 7 Raptor police, with the Raptor police pointing their batons and chasing us. I really thought I was going to die. Those few days were not what any human deserved to suffer. I had no time to sleep, no time to drink water, no time to eat, nervous and towards every moment. My only thought was how to escape alive. Again and again, going through attempts to escape and then failing. In the end, fortunately, a medic arrived, bringing injured protesters, allowing us to leave for treatment at the hospital. Midway, we were stopped by our police, taking lots of time and threateningly documenting all of our information. 2 police even came on the ambulance. Through the whole way, I was so frightened. I only wanted to get treatment and get away from the VAR police. I cannot understand. Why can they ignore our lives, waiting for treatment on the ambulance? Everything that happened in the Polytechnic University only proves the infamous Hong Kong police force's frightening intent to murder. I had not done anything wrong. I could neither see any so-called riot, nor did I participate in any so-called riot. So I had not turned myself in, and I had not confessed any guilt. What I want to say is that since we are situated in an absurd and sick society, we have no choice but to resist. Against the VAR police who intended to murder, I have no choice but to risk my life to escape. I'm very grateful to everyone who tries to help us who have been trapped. At the same time, I'm heartbroken that other protesters, social workers, medics and journalists have to go through the inhumane treatment of the VAR police. Many citizens try to save us. From the perspective of someone outside the campus, to imagine the suffering of those inside, seeing them attacked with disproportionate violence is saddening. I do not know how much more absurdity and crazy things have to happen. I hope all of this will end soon. Choosing to stand up against this twisted society, I only have 2 things in mind. First, I really truly hope that good people may lead a safe and good life. And the people still trapped in Polytechnic University must remain safe without harm. And all other freedom fighters must stay healthy and not get arrested. Second, I wish that Hong Kong will be liberated as soon as possible. May glory be to Hong Kong.
跟住落嚟會到問答嘅環節，咁因為時間有限，所以請每間報館問唔多於2條嘅問題，並且喺發問之前可以講一講自己係邊間報館嘅。We will now have the Q&A section of the day. Due to the limited time that we have today, we would like to ask each of the journalists on the ground to pose no more than 2 questions at a time. And please to give us your affiliation as well before your questions as well. Thank you. So 而家有冇記者會想發問問題
Hello， 你好啊，我哋係跑場新聞嘅。咁而家美國兩會啦，咁就已經通過咗個人權法啦。咁你覺得嚟緊會實施人權法之後，會對成個活動會有啲咩影響呢？
係，多謝呢一位記者嘅發問。咁咧，我好相信咧，美國嘅人權法案通過咗之後咧，對於運動咧係會有正面嘅影響。大家都知道咧，其實美國嘅人權法案咧，佢主要咧有會懲罰一啲打壓人權自由嘅官員啦，同埋監測香港嘅狀況。咁所以咧，相信咧經過咗美國嘅監測之後咧，香港嘅人權狀況咧係會因此有所改善。而一直以嚟人權打壓嘅狀況亦都令好多手足佢哋傷亡，甚至乎可能被消失等等嘅慘況。一啲嘢咧對香港人咧嚟講，唔單止可能係一啲人嘅皮肉上面嘅傷痛，更加多咧係沉重嘅心理打擊。咁亦都好相信呢一個法案通過咗之後，係對於香港人係會有一個信心嘅提升。不過其實到最終我哋成場運動咧，我哋係要達成5大訴求。呢一個美國嘅人權法案咧，可能會保衞到我哋人權上面嘅啲需要，但係其他嘅方面咧，都需要我哋手足一齊齊上齊落，努力爭取。多謝。
蘋果嘅想問2個問題。第一咧就係關於嗰個 Poly 嗰位朋友仔，可唔可以講多啲佢背景資料？例如佢幾多歲啦？咁即係佢個受傷係 點樣受傷，係即係跌落嚟游繩期間點樣受傷，邊個位置受傷，而家個傷勢係點？第二咧就係想問咧最近呢幾日咧都有啲消息就話，其實區議會選舉咧就並唔係話所有參與呢個抗爭運動嘅人都覺得區議會選舉係一個佢哋面對覺得最需要贏嘅一場戰役。咁亦都甚至有啲人咧就話區議會選舉咧係一個香港人對暴力行為嘅一個表態。咁我想問下你哋民間記者會個立場對於個區議會選舉係點樣？即係包括其實係咪覺得區議會選舉並唔係成個抗爭運動其中一個最需要爭取勝利嘅地方，定係還是你會覺得都對於你哋成個運動係有一個指標嘅作用喺度？唔該。
好，我順序咁樣答呢位記者朋友嘅問題。第一咧，關於啱啱理工大學嗰位朋友佢嘅資料咧，咁就實在算我冇辦法喺度講啦。個原因係因為我哋始終都要保障翻佢嘅安全，免受於法律嘅追究嘅。咁其次咧就係關於區議會選舉嘅重要性。咁當然民間記者會咧係會好理解，係絕對唔能夠血債票償，因為而家面對緊好多嘅人權嘅災難問題咧，咁透過區議會選舉咧，單純咁樣去爭取我哋有更加多人去加入個議會咧，未必真係好能夠將成個嘅局勢扭轉，絕對係。但係同一時間嘅區議會選舉咧，都會係有個重要性嘅，因為呢個係我哋其中一個公民責任啦。我作為香港人，其次咧就係區議會選舉咧，咁其實咧都係正如啱啱所講係一種表態。甚至乎咧係關於國際戰線上面，可以用區議會選舉嘅結果咧嚟到呈現翻我哋香港嘅好多人咧係的而且確咧係支持要爭取五大訴求，所以就俾爭取五大訴求嘅候選人入閘成為區議員嘅，所以區議會嘅重要性係不能忽視。多謝。
Hi, I'm from RTHK. On the U.S. Human Rights and Democracy Act, the government's lines that it will add fuel to the fire, it will further boost protesters, violent protests in Hong Kong. What's your take on that? My second question is regarding the district council elections. Some are saying that perhaps protests should stop until the district council elections this Sunday, so that there won't be an excuse for the government to delay, postpone, or even cancel the polls. So what's your take on it? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Your first question is that whether the U.S. Democracy Act is going to fuel the violence on the side of the protesters. We'd like to reiterate here that it is always the government, the oppressive regime that have caused the violence of the protesters, and in fact the force that is used by the protester is merely for the purpose of self-defense. As we can see, the police are using live bullets to shoot protesters, and they are conducting mass arrests without reasons. So this is the response of the protesters, and this is and the force that they are using are merely trying to protect themselves. And the second question on the district council, whether protests should stop to ensure that the district council election can go on. We'd like to stress that there are variegated lines of protest, and we're sure that all protesters, regardless of their positions in the movement, understand that the district council election is one of the important fields. The election will be a chance for us to voice our opinions against the infiltration of Beijing and disapproval of the government. And it is also a solid chance for us to break the economic chain of the corrupted pro-establishment. And we are also aware that there are worries that the actions of protesters, especially concerning maybe the Operation Dawn or other so-called violence actions, will provide an excuse for the government to cancel or postpone the election. But as mentioned, this is no more than an excuse. The right to vote is enshrined in the Basic Law. It is also necessary rights that we deserve as members of society. So it is the responsibility of the government to ensure that our right to vote and to stand for election is protected. And also as a fundamental right, it should never be compromised, and nothing can ever justify a denial of such. In light of the election, we'd also like to stress that it is only one part of our journey towards democracy, and we shall not stop fighting until all of our 5 demands are met.
會唔會有記者朋友仲有問題？
你好，啤利晚報嘅，我想問一問啦，咁今次Poly 呢件事啦，咁有好多人都話因為基於呢個武力不對等啦，咁所以坊間都會有啲聲音話啲學生會死守 Poly 咧，未必係一個好明智嘅決定，因為基於對方嘅武力實在太過強大啦。咁由運動開始之初咧，咁網上面亦都有好多言論話啦，就由運動開始之初都係講緊 Be Water 啦。咁有好多人嘅意見就係 Be Water 除咗係好似水一樣咁流去一啲唔同嘅地方之外啦，咁其實佢亦都係可以隨時係溶喺空氣之中，喺有需要嘅時候就可以聚埋一齊，好似海嘯一樣咁強大嘅力量，先至為之 Be Water。咁我想睇下你哋對於 Be Water 呢一個字，你哋點睇呢？唔該晒。
關於 Be Water 呢一樣嘢對於呢場運動嘅意義呢，咁其實啱啱嗰位記者朋友呢，其實都講得好好，要七七八八㗎啦。冇錯 ，Be Water 呢的而且確係講緊我哋除咗如流水一般嘅時候，仲係我哋可以以不同形態集結成一個強大嘅力量。因此呢，對於唔同嘅情況，我哋應該用唔同嘅手段。Poly 嘅手足固然之呢，佢哋覺得死守呢係有佢哋嘅價值。而其他人呢，有啲人可能支持，亦都有啲人呢，可能就會覺得更加要流水式咁抗爭。而呢一次 Be Water 嘅精髓呢，就係在於當面對住唔同嘅情況之下，我哋都要尊重手足決定。所以我哋都會覺得呢 Poly 嘅手足呢，我哋都會支持佢哋。而我哋就算呢，哪怕可能結果未盡如意都好，我哋都知道喺 Poly 嘅一日入面，我哋的而且確呢，面對住好沉重嘅代價。而我哋之後咧喺網絡上面咧，我哋嘅手足之間亦都針對住唔同嘅戰況咧，我哋都要作出檢討，嚟到轉換我哋嘅戰勢。咁所以我都好相信 Be Water 咧，我哋跟住落嚟咧都可以繼續如流水一般咁樣繼續面對呢一個警暴嘅政府，繼續抗爭落去，達至5大訴求。
會唔會仲有記者朋友想問問題 ？Any question would like to ask?
I apologize if this is kind of repeating what she asked, but I was wondering when I heard her mention Be Water, and I was just wondering if you thought that the sort of tactics and the situation at Polytechnic University was a mistake in the sense that it was, went against the principle of Be Water and to keep all the protesters in one location. Do you look at that as something that was an error in judgment or an unfortunate situation? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. As we mentioned just now, Be Water we think is an idea. It's not just a description of a tactic, but also a description of our spirit to, in face of difficulties, we know that we can figure out different ways to cope with it. And regarding whether we think that the tactic of staying in the universities are actually against the principle of Be Water, this is a very difficult choice of, I believe, of the protesters, because it is not up to them to choose what kind of tactics to adopt and what they do in the face of the immense violence of the police. It is the police who chose to besiege the Polytechnic University and to use extreme violence against students and also protesters inside. And the only way that they can keep their own safety is to do what they were doing inside Polytechnic University.
我係看新媒體嘅，咁咧想問一個問題咧，就係而家好似有啲嘢係進到另外一個level 嘅啦，咁一個層次嘅。咁以前咧之前咧一路都係香港政府針對嘅政府嘅問題，同埋少少嗰個中聯辦嘅問題，好似而家咧包括北京咧，包括習近平咧已經開始出聲㗎啦。咁呢樣嘢咧，顯示係好嚴重先會咁樣嘅。咁有冇考慮到咧？無論係嗰個人權法過咗同埋未過，其實對抗爭者嚟講咧，都係一個要面對更加艱難嘅另外一種抗爭㗎啦。咁呢一種咧，你哋係點樣睇？有冇考慮咗咧？同埋一種咧係其實好多人咧係對中共嗰種嘅手法咧，其實係香港警察呢面咧。仲未完全表現出嚟嘅，但係仲有更加總之係更加嘅殘忍或者係決心啦。其實呢同睇到嗰個國際上嘅嗰個現實同埋香港嘅現實嚟講咧，香港人必須面對呢一個問題。咁呢個抗爭會其實係會更加，我哋嘅分析咧應該係會更加嘅艱難，同埋更加另外一個 higher level。咁你哋點睇嘅？有冇考慮過呢個問題？唔該。
咁多謝呢位記者朋友嘅提問。咁我哋都好理解咧，其實呢一場運動咧，就正如因為我哋嘅抗爭者係 Be Water， 所以我哋逐步咁樣升級。例如我哋就會開始有黎明行動，例如咧我哋會開始有更加多人更加趨向咧以武制暴。咁換之而嚟，我哋都會理解到咧，其實呢一個港共政府啦，同埋中共呢個可怕嘅政權咧，固然之係會更加施加更加大嘅打壓。呢一個咧係我哋作為抗爭者需要有嘅醒覺嚟嘅。我哋唔會因為我哋面對住咁大嘅打壓，我哋更加唔應該覺得佢太可怕，佢太大力度，所以去暫緩或者停止我哋嘅抗爭。因為我哋都堅信五大訴求必須缺一不可，先可以令到呢一場嘅困局真正走出嚟，先至真正對於以前我哋咁多嘅手足還以交代。咁喺呢度咧，我都知道好多手足咧都會因為咁樣咧而可能會感到彷徨，但係好相信咧香港人嘅流水抗爭咧，總有一日咧都會凱旋而歸嘅。
會唔會仲有記者朋友會有問題 ？Any question would like to ask？ 咁如果各位記者朋友冇問題想問嘅話，咁今日嘅記者會就到此為止。咁再一次好多謝各位記者朋友到場。咁如果大家仲有疑問嘅話咧，可以留返問題同埋聯絡資料，咁我哋會以書面嘅回應。Unfortunately, we will need to announce the end of today's press conference now, and we would like to thank everyone for coming in today again. And we hope you're all taking something away. If you still have any outstanding questions that you didn't manage to get in, we do apologize for that. But you are more than welcome to leave behind your content, and we will get back to you with a written response in due course. Many thanks indeed again for coming today. 咁今日嘅記者會就完啦，多謝大家。